Welcome to this week's Into the Wilderness podcast. I'm bringing the intro to you from Namibia. Well, certainly the start of it anyway. My brother is back in Scotland. I haven't quite returned home yet. He will be bringing up the back end of this intro, bringing you news on competitions and I'm sure a few other things which I haven't been able to keep on top of while I've been away. I'm half a day now away from joining in the CIC conference, well, the symposium, the day before the actual conference itself, with a whole heap of journalists and thinkers and conservationists from around the world. It's going to be fascinating. I've had dinner with our good friend Tyler Sharp, Editor-in-Chief of Modern Huntsman tonight, and a couple of other people who are going to be in the symposium tomorrow. And just the chat around the dinner table was podcast worthy. So I'm hoping that the four of us are going to sit down and bring you an entire show maybe tomorrow evening. I think that's probably going to be the best time to do it. But anyway, on to this week's episode, which is an interview that I recorded with Francois Meyer, who, as many of you will know and hopefully have been following on the Instagram stories from about a week ago from when I'm recording this intro. I spent a good chunk of time with him, maybe 5 or 6 days, and this is where your money has been going if you contributed to the Pangolin auction that we were running. We brought thermal and motion cameras to the guys on the ground to be used in pangolin conservation. There's some more money that has been left over from the auctions because we didn't spend it all, and now that I've met Francois and the team at the African Pangolin Working Group, I have a better idea what other equipment they're going to need. So I know that, for example, we went to track one pangolin. I think it could have been the night after we recorded this podcast, which was on like a government reserve, and the people there doing security who guided us or had to be in attendance with us while we were trying to check up on this pregnant female didn't have any torches. So some of the money is going to be used to provide torches to those guys on the ground who are actually fighting the good fight. Seems ridiculous that they wouldn't have equipment like that, especially when they're in charge for looking after the area at night, but they don't. So hopefully we're going to be able to help with that. But you're going to hear a fascinating account as to what we were up to while I was with Francois and what they do in the African Pangolin Working Group, what his role is, the research that he's doing, and just how precarious the position is for pangolin around the world, not just in Africa, but also globally, because there are some Asian species as well. Once I finished up with Francois in South Africa, I promptly headed over to Namibia, where I've been for just about a week now. Most of that time I've been with Jan also for safaris, where I spent my time with Alex and his mom, Annetta, learning about their operation and the sort of the contrast and comparison between running a hunting outfit on one hand and also part of their business which caters for photographic tourism. Trying to understand how both of those fit was a really interesting conversation, because it is something that comes up time and time again when we look at alternative ways of wildlife management, particularly in places like Africa, where it's very often suggested that we could replace hunting with photographic tourism. But here is a really, really good example, with no BS, of a family which run both on a large farm. It's 30,000+ hectares, so vastly bigger than most estates that we have in Scotland, and they are doing both. So they can tell you, as indeed Alex does in the interview that I did with him, how they compare and what the reality is on the ground. It's very easy for us to make broad sweeping statements from half a world away, but if you really, really want to understand how conservation works on the ground, you really need to speak to the people who are living it every day. And I hope that that's what I've managed to do here, and indeed I hope it's what we've managed to do most of the time in the podcast. But that's coming up in the next few weeks. I'm not quite sure when that podcast with Alex is going to come out. We're going to be grabbing a whole heap of new content in the next couple of days here at the CIC, and again when I get back in about a week's time, of which we'll be going straight in to the Northern Shooting Show, which I can't wait to go. There's a whole stack of people who I've been meaning to catch up with at home for a long time, and I know that a lot of them are going to be at the Northern Shooting Show. And we also have 2 talks going on, one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. You'll see all the information about what they're going to be about, along with all the other people who are doing talks in the deer hunter area, which is on the Northern Shooting Show Instagram and Facebook page, and we'll put up details of the things that we're involved in on our Facebook and Instagram in the next week or so. So with that, I won't keep you any longer. I will hand over to my brother in Scotland, and he can give you the latest updates before we get into this podcast.
And seamlessly, we transition to Scotland. This will be the last podcast for a while that me and Byron are in different locations, podcasting from different sides of the world. I don't really need to do much of an introduction. Byron did a pretty awesome introduction of what is going to happen in the show, so I don't need to say any more than that. Few updates. In the last 2 weeks, it has gone a little bit crazy south of the border. There has been massive changes, massive things happening to do with general licenses. Unfortunately, we've just not been able to cover this at all. As regular listeners know, we are in different parts of the world. As I currently sit, Beth that works in the office, she is currently on holiday in Mallorca, I think. Byron is in South Africa, and I am in Scotland, and I am away to drive to Edinburgh to a GWCT event in a matter of hours. So, we're kind of split up all over the world, and there's just so many things going on. But what we will do is, when Byron is back, we'll dig through this. And what is interesting? Well, not interesting. What we tend to like to do anyway is that there's just a huge amount of noise whenever anything like this happens. There is a huge amount of noise, and don't be wrong, I mean, immediate action needed to be taken. But what was the point in us weighing in on anything when nobody even had the facts? Literally, no one had any facts. Nobody knew anything. I don't think in natural England even knew anything to start with. So it's probably much better if we do a separate show, and then we get hold of some people, and they can come on and talk about what's happened, what's happening in the future, and kind of what went wrong. So I think that's a better idea of what to do with that show. On to the important things, of course. So we have a competition winner from 2 weeks ago, and that was to win a whole bunch of Horndy and CZ products. Miscellaneous, and there was definitely some CZ mints in there as well. And it was an Instagram competition, and all you had to do was tag us on a post on Instagram to let us know what you're up to this time of year, kind of springtime. And the winner is Joe Preston, who sent us a picture of lambing. So Joe, get in touch. We'll send you some goodies. We're going to have a new competition. And as I'm currently sitting, the office is in complete disarray. I'm talking, you can barely walk around it because we're in the process, well, I am, in the process of redoing a room next door, which is a way to become our kind of permanent podcast studio, and also a storage unit for all of our products and everything, our coffee and t-shirts and everything. So what I am going to do is that it's just going to be a miscellaneous prize again. You have no idea what there is, but I know there is a handful. I think there might be one Horndy reloading manual left. There is definitely some CZ products left. There might even be a pair of ballistic glasses, and possibly I think there is some caps as well. So I'm going to make another little bundle up, because hopefully in 1 day's time, as the office is finished, I'll be able to go through all of the products again and and we'll be able to get a better idea of what we've got. But for now, it's a lucky dip. It really is a lucky dip. But I like that, and you're definitely getting some CZ mints thrown in as well, because we have a huge amount of those. So all you have to do to win this is it's a picture competition. We're going to run it on Instagram and on Facebook, and the topic is literally anything. It's just whatever you're up to, preferably outdoors, but yeah, tag us in a picture, and it is literally whatever catches our eye, then you are the winner. That's it. We'll put up a post about it as well in the following day, and just post your pictures below. We've done loads of these picture competitions, and they've always done phenomenally well, and we love to see what people are up to. So it's pretty awesome. Talking about picture competitions, this is a separate competition, so put that in a box, what I've just talked about, to win all of the goodies of the CZ, Hornady goodies and that. Put that in one box. Now there's a separate competition, which is pretty damn cool. At the Northern Shooting Show, which is imminently upon us, I do realise that it's less than a week away. No, it's a week away, so it's the 11th, 12th of May, so we're approaching it very fast. We have been running, over the last few weeks, a photography competition, and it is free to enter for everyone, and there is 4 categories. I'm actually just going to bring them up on my phone so I get them right. So the categories are working dogs, working life, small game, and big game. That is it. And all you need to do is send your pictures to enter to info@paceproductionsuk.com. Simple as that. Send your pictures. Now, I have 2 requests, please. Please, if you're sending 15 pictures, please, for the love of God, put them into either, 1, a folder, a Dropbox, or we transfer them. Please do not send 15 emails, or in fact 1 the other day that was 25. We appreciate all the entries, we really do, but when you have 25 emails from one person, it's quite a lot. So all I request is that you just think about the way that you send your files. There is better ways out there. WeTransfer is the king. So WeTransfer it, and then also be helpful if you leave your name as well. All the details are on various social media platforms, on our Pace Brothers page, the podcast page, the DNA Film Festival page, and out of those 4 categories, those 4 lucky winners are going to win some awesome prizes worth about £250 each. And I'm actually staring at 2 of the prizes, and one of them is a Kanai bag, and it's a photography bag, and it has it's kind of I want to say it is a combat looking bag, but it's not. It's something I would definitely use. In fact, I'm going to buy one myself. But it has this really cool insert, and I took a picture of it. It's also online, and I managed to put 3-4 lenses in, the small drone in, and also my camera in this bag. It's perfect, absolutely perfect for all of your photography needs. We also are giving away, it's called a slide light. It's a camera strap by Peak Design, and we use it on all of our own cameras, and it's a really cool tab system, so you can detach the straps really easy, and they're interchangeable between cameras. And because we've got multiple cameras, it's really easy if you could just change the strap between different cameras. So we're throwing one of them in, plus the bag, which is worth £170. That strap's worth about, I think it's £50, and then on top of that, you're also getting a full Zeiss cleaning kit for your camera, which we also use. So those are some really cool prizes, and if I was a photographer starting out, or just not even starting out, if I didn't have these things already, then I'd be over the moon to get these. So get your entries in now, and the email address will be below in this as well. But if you need any more information about that, like I said, just head over to the Facebook page on the DNA Film Festival page, and everything is on there as well, all the details. Now, I've already done the competition. Yes, I have. I've already done the competition. I think that is it for this week. There's been a lot of things going on the last 2 weeks, like I said, and me and Byron need to do a catch-up show because I've barely spoken to him. You have currently heard more from him in the last 2 hours of this podcast than I have in the last month. So that shows you how little we've actually spoken. And when I was editing this podcast, I was learning everything as you were learning it as well, because I only got the files about a day ago. So enjoy the show.
Francois, we're sitting in probably one of the most awesome locations I've ever recorded a podcast. And I've recorded podcasts in some pretty cool places around the world, but I think this probably takes it. It's something else. We're sitting here on this like elevated lapa, I suppose.
Yeah.
With a bar there. Your dog's really not sure about this podcast.
No, definitely not.
We tried to start recording this about 5 minutes ago, turned all the gear on, we stuck the headsets on, and Toro just went nuts, just barking at us. I've no idea why, but he's chilled out now. You might hear him in a second if he decides to bark. Hopefully not.
You'll definitely hear it.
You'll definitely know about it. It's so piercing. I think it nearly burst my eardrums.
Yeah, I hope your equipment survives that bark. Eh?
Yeah, he wanted to nibble the headset, but unfortunately you managed to stop him. But he's really not convinced. He's still standing here looking at us, listening intently with his ears. Maybe it's because I didn't bring a headset for him.
Oh, yeah. No, he doesn't want to be excluded. I mean, the past few days he's been busy.
Yeah, he has.
And now he just has to sit and watch us.
Finding Pangolin. He was amazing this morning. Explain where in the country we are right now. We're obviously in South Africa, as people will probably know, that I was heading here.
Of course, I can't be too specific, but essentially...
They're like the province.
Yeah, so Limpopo province, northern Limpopo.
Okay, which is in the north of South Africa.
Yeah, so the Limpopo province is the most northern province, and then we're in northern Limpopo.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's
this
this is mainly where I'm based, and there's some release sites in the area as well, but the release sites are kind of spread out in the entire Limpopo.
Just paint a picture for the kind of terrain here, because it's so different. I've just been down in the Eastern Cape before coming here, and I've been up in this part of South Africa before, but not for a long time. And I forgot just how different it is up here. I mean, for a start, all these baobabs just dotted around like sentinels in the bush are just incredible.
Yes, how do you explain this? Well, this is called the savanna biome. So savanna biome is characterized by a balance between woody plantation and grass cover, I suppose. Sorry, my English might drop me in every now and then.
It's been absolutely perfect, probably better than my English so far. So
yeah, so and this is like a Mupani woodland type of savanna. So it's mostly dominated by acacia species and the Mupani trees, and then with the sandstone, what we call koppies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which are rocky outcrops.
Rocky outcrops, right? Yeah. So you get this uneven terrain essentially, and then, like you say, there's just this massive baobabs popping up. And if you just look over the entire terrain and you start paying attention, you just see how they are spread out. Sometimes just next to each other, and it just keeps going.
It's so because it's such an unusual tree to view and so iconic to this part of Africa.
And it's just on a different time scale, you know.
They've been here a very long time.
Very long time to get those sizes.
It's great. I must try and take some pictures today, just for scale for people, with me or you standing beside it with our arms around it. Because even the one that's in the area of the place that we're staying here is an ancient, colossal giant.
Yeah, no, and if we get to go to the other big one today. You're going to need a wide-angle lens. For that one.
Is it way bigger than this one? Is it the one that's in the middle?
Like lengthwise, that's about as big as they get. But this one, I would say, is at least 3 times as thick as that.
No way.
Yeah, it's massive. It's intimidating.
Really?
It's got a presence of its own. Like it's definitely an awesome sight.
I'm looking forward to that. Is that the one we might be braaiing under later?
Yeah, hopefully. if time allows
it. It's been a pretty busy couple of days, and we've been trying to catch little bits of sleep every now and then in between waking up early. But before we get to that, I should probably rewind a bit and explain exactly what I've been doing with you. Now, I think the place to start, especially for people who listen to our podcast regularly, is the auction that we ran to raise money for the conservation of pangolin, which you are integrally involved in.
Yeah.
I know we've had a few conversations about it before I arrived and since we've arrived, and you've seen all the equipment that we've brought. You were pretty blown away, you were telling me, by the support that effort gained so quickly.
No, it's such a refresh. How can I explain it? It was such an instant and such a positive type of support. Everybody that was involved. It felt really personal. Each item felt like you can see the people that's giving. Everybody was engaged, and I mean the speed that targets was reached.
That was insane. Wasn't
and like we discussed, it wasn't like the auction was. Just check your phone there.
There's a puddle. There's a river on top of my phone dribbling from a dog's mouth with the jewel. He's still not sure about the podcast. He's sitting here, just I don't know what, observing, making sure that there's no untoward. But that's okay. My phone is dry now. Yeah. So carry on.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the support, it did happen pretty quick, didn't it?
Yeah, and that was even, it was just casually advertised. It wasn't like everybody was going out of their way advertising that auction, and it just happened, and of course the equipment that came from it is just insane. Like we tested this morning, that thermal spotter, I suppose you call it, eh?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yes, that thing's gonna make a difference.
How are you gonna, we're gonna explain exactly what it is that you do in the research that you're doing in the African Pangolin Working Group. We'll get to that. But what is it that you're going to use, that you can foresee yourself using the thermal for in particular? I know we've discussed a few things that it might be useful for.
How we tested it this morning, just it's already effective on quite a distance. The things that immediately came to mind for me is first off safety. Like if I have to climb into these koppies, these rocky outcrops, a risk there is leopards.
And it's a very real risk all the time.
It's a very real risk, especially if I go to properties that I don't know personally myself, So you can just scope ahead, I suppose. And like the area where we were this morning, if you go out in the evening there, especially in the thick vegetation, there's buffalo. So when you're going at night, that's just to help you see what you normally can't, So it's so for safety wise, it'll definitely make a difference. And then another thing that I really think where it's going to help is looking into some of the caves where these pangolin take shelter in, because the big thing with the caves or any shelter, you don't want to mess around their burrows or in this case the caves, because that's where they're sleeping, that's where they're safe.
Yeah, that's their home for the night. Or
so
whatever,
you don't want your scent around it. You don't want to mess around there too long. So normally for me to see or to confirm if an animal is in there, I'll need to shove a camera or a phone or something in there, or shine with my torch, trying to just get a form of visual. So spending too much time essentially.
Yeah.
Now you can look with that thing into darkness, and if the animal is there, it'll pick up its thermal signature, and then you can confirm your sighting and go. So it's just makes things so much more effective.
And even with getting in close with the telemetry to the ones that you have tagged, it does actually, even once you get close, it's that bit that seems to take the longest, because you don't quite know where they are. Yeah. They're in the vicinity, but they could be in some thick bush.
Like you saw this morning as well, the telemetry, it actually becomes more tricky the closer you get to the animal, because now the signal is flooded. Yeah. So you're getting a strong signal in all directions. And we're actually going to use that thing tonight, because we're going to a reserve where, we're depending on other people to guide us to the point. So we're going after hours. We don't want to waste their time. We want to get in and out. In this case, we want to confirm if this pangolin just recently had a pup.
Oh, that's so exciting.
So if she's there and we're mumbling around, and making noise and stepping and stressing that animal out, because now you're looking for it, even though you don't know where it is, it knows you're there.
Oh yeah.
So if you've got that, if you can quickly, the faster you see it, the quicker you can get out. So we're gonna give that thing a test run tonight, and if find her, confirm everything is okay, and leave, and you don't need to struggle about.
I want to tell everybody about what we were doing before we got to the location that we're in now, because that was exciting, because that was the release of a new pangolin, so we're going to talk about it. But just explain what it is that you're doing and your relationship with the African Pangolin Working Group, because you're involved in research and study that is on a species that people really seem to, and I've understood this from the conversations you and I have had over the last few years, and with the professor as well, over the last few days, that people really don't know that much about it. Which is amazing.
And you know what the scary thing is? Like, people don't know anything about it. And the scary thing is this species of pangolin, the Temminck's ground pangolin, this is the most researched one.
Oh, really?
So that's scary. So we know that little, and this is the one pangolin that's actually been researched the most out of all of them. So for the fact's sake, there's essentially 4 Asian species and 4 African species of pangolin. But we only have the one, the Temminck's ground pangolin, also called the Cape ground pangolin. That's the one we've got over here. Yeah, so my involvement, where to start actually. So I've known the African Pangolin Working Group for quite some time, and throughout my career I've been involved with conservation for quite a few years. And then the one day we got contacted by people in the area, and they made me aware of a pangolin that they personally confiscated. There was a guy on the border selling pangolins, and even a leopard cub.
Really?
Yeah. So it was such a. I mean, that's the last phone call you really expect. So I'm going to try and summarize, but this got me to contact the Professor Ray Jansen from the working group. So me and him have had a few chats throughout about 3 years before that, and I contacted him on advice on this, because these guys, they're like, Francois, you know animals, what do we do? How do we feed it?
And it was close to the area where you were.
Yeah, close enough, yeah. So these guys were calling me for advice, and then you realize, like, I don't know anything about the species. I don't know what to tell you.
Had you seen one at that point?
I've seen one in my life before that. So it just shows you, most people haven't seen them in their entire life.
It's crazy. This is a slight tangent from your story, but I've got family and friends who live here and have done for their entire life. And when I told them that I was coming to see you and do the photography and give the equipment for pangolin, they all knew what it was. A lot of it for bad reasons, because it's the most trafficked animal in the world. But none of them had seen one.
Yeah,
none of them, and they live here.
And you don't even expect to see one. So it's a So when I got this call, you just realize you're blank. So I contacted the professor, and we essentially try. Again, I'm going to summarize a long thing, but we summarized assess the situation, and thought it's best. I need to go and fetch this animal, so that at least now it's in.
So you got safe hands.
Yeah, not. I mean, those guys.
Oh, because it was already confiscated at this point.
Yeah, but by individuals. Nature conservation and the police wasn't involved at this point yet, but we quickly got them involved. Like, don't do this stuff with. This is not. You're not Batman or anything. It's not vigilante time. So with any of this stuff, the quicker you get the police and nature conservation involved, the better.
Yeah.
But the point is, we wanted to minimize the whole line of contact, in a sense of, I need to. If the professor asks me, look underneath the scales for wounds, or look for signs of an injured animal, that we don't need to ask 7 people to get to that information.
Yeah. Okay. Got you.
So. Of course, I went to pick up the animal, brought it back, and then, we kind of. I think she was the first one to be gone through this whole soft release protocol that you.
So did you take it down to where the working group is based? Did you?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No. This one. We did everything in the field, like, because she wasn't like really hurt or dehydrated or anything. She had a small wound underneath her scale, and she was a bit shook from being handled by the poachers and stuff, but it wasn't necessary for her to go to the hospital. So the professor guided me through an entire thing of how to check out her condition, and we then introduced this soft release protocol where we take them out each evening, where they walk for a few hours and you observe how much they're eating. We weigh them, and you see them pick up condition. And with this one, actually, you could see she was a really tired animal. And once she got the chance to get food and even water, her condition just picked up instantly. So the idea was monitor the release, because we were in a position where we could do it, and then we were going to release her. And then we got the question, because back then I was involved with a rhino monitoring project. So we're like, well, we monitor rhinos every day. Is it possible to monitor this animal in the same way? So I asked the professor, like, can we actually install is there trackers that you can install these animals? And he's like, yeah, that's definitely possible. That's a good idea. And I said, well, let's do that then. And as soon as I hung up the phone, I was like, wait, and I call him back and again, and I'm like, wait, I study conservation ecology. I'm looking for opportunity to continue my studies. Is there any gap for research on this?
So at this point, you'd done your undergrad in ecology.
Yeah.
But you're now working in the field of conservation.
Yeah. And I've always wanted to continue my studies, but on something that I'm passionate about, because then it's not really work. And actually, funny enough, on this point, I was looking for opportunity to maybe continue my studies on leopards.
Okay.
With the leopard hunting ban and all that what's happening quite recently, it's a hot topic, and I do agree that leopards are we shouldn't assume that we know everything about them.
Well, that's such an elusive animal.
It's such an elusive animal, so more research is needed, especially in different areas. In any case, so when I suggested this to the professor, that's where he freaked out. He's like, that's what I want to hear, and yes, then things just started happening, but the scope of the project also just started growing, because you think, oh, I'm going to release a pangolin, it's going to be a lot of fun, it's going to be so unique. It's a lot of work. And,
as I've seen a little glimpse of it.
Yeah, and little sleep. So I quickly realized you can't do rhinos and pangolin.
It's too much work.
Both are two intense species.
Yeah. They need your full dedication of your time.
Yeah. So and with this project, we just came to the conclusion, like, this needs to be a full-time thing. This cannot be a sideline thing. And we realize that more and more every day. You've met Abram. He's one of the few guys that's being trained in this as well. Because I'm also not enough. Like this, it needs to be bigger. So I'm not going to go into the details, but then I decided to put all my focus on this, and I just picked up from there.
and you begun your master's study at the same time.
Yes,
it was all in conjunction with this.
Yes,
with the African.
Yeah, so initially the master's got things started, but now it's more like the masters and that stuff. That's more of a byproduct now of the work.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm working with the African Pangolin Working Group now, and just you met them, just a great and dedicated team. So I'm focused on the whole field work, the rehabilitation, release, and the monitoring afterwards, and guiding people through that, like with the training, because like you saw, it's its own thing. You and I won't go into the detail of the African Pangolin Working Group or the Rehabilitation Centre, because hopefully, fingers crossed, I'm going to catch up with Ray, the professor, in like 2 weeks' time when I get back from Namibia, and I'll cover all of that with him. So we're going to have a whole other podcast from his point of view, and a bit about his background as well, and what they're doing there. You need to hear those stories. You need to hear from him. No, it was great. I was fortunate enough to go and meet him and some of the people who were working there and involved in the rehabilitation and walking the rehabilitated pangolin so that they can feed. And it was, you realize when you see what they have to do on the ground before they get sent to you for release, how much work is required. It's insane. And there's no way that, from what I could see, that there's no cutting corners. You just have to put the time in. It requires a lot of man hours. Yeah, and of course it's a freaking nocturnal animal as well. So you have to. It's all after hours. It goes into your personal time, and that's at step one. And funny enough, well, not funny, but some of these, so. All of the pangolins in this project now that I'm focusing on, these are animals that's been confiscated from poachers. So, on lucky occasions we do get animals that's been confiscated and they're still in good health. But a lot of them have been abused or hit with pangas to break pieces off of their scale for muti.
That's medicine.
Yeah. So these animals, they haven't been fed. They haven't had access to water. Poor sleeping conditions. Like, these are super stressed and abused animals. So the guys at the hospital, they receive these things. Like what you saw, that's the after they've been
the young pangolin I saw was in a really good state,
good condition. Yeah,
but they don't come in like that.
They don't come in like that. So you I don't want to say you have to get thick-skinned, but you don't, like, this is the good stuff, and I'm so happy that we get to this point, and we get a lot of pangolins to this point. But unfortunately, you do see animals that's been through hell, and that the team over there with what they're doing, you need to be strong to keep doing that,
and to be able to continually see the poor state of animals coming in, which have just been abused.
Because it's a knock, because the team's doing the rescuing. I'm not going to go into detail with that. Ray will.
I'll speak to Ray about the.
But from the retrieval team to the veterinary team to the to the guys doing the soft releases and the release and the monitoring, it's from all those people involved, and you do get losses, but if that loss happens, it's all of those people,
everyone feels it.
All of that emotion is in that moment, but vice versa as well. If there's a successful release, like Young River that we saw this morning, that's such a successful release, and then I suppose then everybody's happy.
Well, I know from your communications with the group, and you're keeping everyone up to date with the various different pangolin that you're involved with, and everyone has such a vested interest in it, and they're so enthusiastic about hearing when you've got even just little snippets of news.
Yeah, no, it makes a difference, and I suppose that's what makes my job. It's the nice part. Like, I can get to report that stuff as well to them.
What is the issue that pangolin face? I mean, we've talked about poaching, but why? Just elaborate on that a little bit to explain why they're under such threat.
I think an easy way, or the best way to understand, is kind of to compare it with rhinos. Rhinos are a bit more well known and people understand their situation. So just like with rhinos and with actually lions, you get the Asian species. There's Asian rhinos and there's tigers, and there's a demand for tiger bone or blood or rhino horn and all that stuff.
For various different medicinal purposes.
And unfortunately, with a growing population of people, the demand for those type of things are also just ridiculous. And the Asian species, they can't supply that demand, and their
the
numbers
species that they have in Asia.
It can't supply that demand. It's impossible. So those numbers are decreasing. I mean, if you look at some of those rhinos there as well, it's pretty much on the brink of extinction. And to supply the demand for these products, they start targeting then the African species. And of course over here we've got poverty, so chuck the value of these items into that mix, and
there's your incentive for poaching.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. I mean, I don't know all the stats now, especially with the lack of sleep memorized, but if you just look, for example, in 2017, I think there was close to 47 tons confiscated of pangolin scales between Africa and Asia. And this year alone, by February, there was already 40 tons confiscated.
I saw, just before I came out, there was a thing in the BBC News, there was a picture of a container.
Yeah.
And it was looking into the container. It was all just dried, flat pangolin.
If we get a gap later or tomorrow, I'll show you the stats on a graph. And it's just ridiculous. It just keeps skyrocketing.
And that's just what we know of.
Yeah, that's what we know of. I mean, there's been a case now where pangolin scales they've been deep fried, so
what?
they look different, and they're I think they were trying to sell them as avo chips.
Yeah.
So they're sneaking these things
in all sorts of ways.
So
to disguise them.
Yeah, it's scary. These it's where money is involved, you you just get this ridiculous stuff, eh?
And this one of the things that I find so frustrating about it is much like rhino horn, because my understanding is it's basically the same material, right? It's like
exactly.
your fingernail, same makeup.
It's exactly.
It does nothing for anybody.
It does nothing.
It's not like people are poaching. There's an incentive to poach, and it's being poached, and it's being shipped to other parts of the world to cure cancer.
Yeah, it does nothing.
It does nothing.
Yeah,
you should just chew your fingernails, basically.
Yeah, it's hair. It's modified hair. When you dehorn a rhino, it even smells like.
It does smell like when you cut the whole. Yeah.
When we attach the tags, we attach it on the pangolin scales, so it doesn't hurt them at all. But you have to drill a tiny hole in the scale. Smells the exact same. So it's modified hair. But you explaining that to people. I mean, it is. It's a good also seeing on social media. Pangolins are becoming more popular.
The awareness of the species.
There is more awareness. So it is good, but unfortunately, it's not happening really fast enough. But there is good stuff. Yes, there's people working hard to save the species. Some crazy dedicated people in Vietnam as well.
Yeah.
But
it'd be amazing to see what they're doing out there. That might be something for the future.
Oh yeah, I'll actually show you on Instagram what to follow there.
Are you in contact with the people out there?
I'm becoming more in contact now, but Ray is.
He is all the time.
Oh man, he's in contact with everybody.
Yeah. I'll have to speak to him about that.
But yeah, no, it does nothing, and like I say, it's such a frustrating thing because it's just why.
And it's down to it's an education thing from the people who are consuming it.
Yeah, a species that's already a rare sighting. Even in African cultures, it's seen as a blessing when you see these things. It's a naturally rare species, and now it's being even further impacted by something pointless. It's not like it actually has any medicinal value or any value, but people still go for it.
It's a really quite curious and incredible animal. I was trying to record some notes for another podcast I'm going to put together on this subject, combining all the stuff that we've been doing and some of the field audio. And I was trying to articulate my feeling when I saw a pangolin for the first time, which was with Ray.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really do it.
Yeah.
It was... I didn't really know what to say. It was... I actually felt this level of emotion that I really, really was not expecting.
Yeah.
Because it's not this a giant elephant.
Yeah.
It's not a rhino, which is a very imposing animal because of its size and stature, and it's known the world over. Everybody knows what one looks like.
Yeah.
It is famously African. This is a relatively small, low-standing ground animal that's all scaly, and yet you see their interaction and the way that they use their hand and the little snuffles that they make, and you can't help but be endeared by it.
Sounds like they're beatboxing.
They're incredible.
No.
Tell people a little bit about it. I mean, you've educated me an unbelievable amount in just how they function in the bush. Everything from the way that they walk, the way they carry themselves, to what they eat.
Yeah,
to paint a picture.
Yeah, when you see pictures of them, or at least when I did, because you see in field guide books and stuff, you see a picture of a pangolin, you think it's this little slow moving animal, but in actual fact, I mean, the one that we released at the other side, I mean, that was about 11 kilograms, eh?
Yeah.
Another male that I've also released, he was 15 kilograms, so they're huge. Well, bigger than one would expect.
Yeah.
And such a specially adapted animal, from all angles, they're I'm not even going to pronounce that term in English, but they specifically feed only on ants and termites, nothing else. And with that, I suppose anteater or aardvark, they're not related to them at all, but they also have that elongated tongue.
Yeah.
So the tongue is essentially longer than the body, if it's fully extended.
It's longer than their body.
Yeah. So the tongue attaches here, next to the stomach on the diaphragm.
Okay.
So the tongue, it's got its own whole sheath that it pulls into. They don't have teeth. They essentially can't open their jaw. So the jaw can move a tiny bit open, but they don't like even if
I hadn't noticed that because I obviously I saw them eating because we spent a lot of time watching them eat. But they've always got their nose buried in the soil, and then you never really get to see the tongue. Although if people go and have a look at your Instagram, there's an amazing picture of one with its tongue extended.
That's when it's yawning.
Yeah.
So it can't even open the jaw to yawn. So when they yawn, the tongue like slowly goes out and then pulls back in. So it's
it's very funny.
Very
it's
cute,
a great picture.
So no, thanks, man. But yeah, so first off, you got that crazy tongue for shooting into the termite nests and all the burrows, for eating, and then the scales. There's nothing like it. It's
prehistoric.
It's a mammal, and it's got scales. Like it's like what's happening here, and if you see the scales as well, I'm sure you notice, but the scales move individually,
Yeah, it's like armor.
Yeah,
as a manufactured armor,
like scale mail.
Yeah, like chainmail.
So you've got that tongue, which is ridiculous. Then the scales, claws for digging, and funny enough, you'll see. You saw the river climbing the tree this morning.
I did. Yeah.
And you should see how they use the claws to. Before I continue, how some ants, the defense mechanism they have is their heads. So the soldier ants will close openings of their nests.
Okay.
Physically with their heads.
Huh. So they just ram themselves in there.
Yeah, and the pangolin just shoves his claw in there,
breaks the hole.
Individual claws into the hole, and then shoots the tongue in again.
Knocks the door down.
Yeah. So
I'm coming in.
So the tongue, claws, scales, and then even the way they walk.
It is the weirdest thing.
Yeah, it's so these guys, the ground pangolin, they walk bipedal. They walk on their back legs, and then their tail counterbalances the back, and then their front feet lifts off the ground when they hold their little claws together like that.
It's so weird when you walk because they almost cross their hands.
Yeah, people
they're very polite.
Yeah, people say they look polite or they look like they're planning something.
Scheming.
Scheming. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like a little velociraptor.
Yeah,
except low to the ground.
It's like a polite velociraptor. Yeah, and it allows them to freaking move. They walk with quite a speed,
how much ground they can cover in such a short space of time.
Yeah, and bulldozing through everything. You think, there's a thorn branch that's going to stop it. Nope, not around it. It's straight through it.
And very little care in the world.
Yeah,
they've got their mission, and that's it. And nothing's going to get in their way.
So it's such a crazy and spatially adapted animal. It's such a on all levels, and like I said, there's nothing except other species of pangolin that can compare with it. And then when you look at the other species of pangolin, they're like the black-bellied pangolin, the white-bellied pangolin. These guys, they're climbing trees. Then again, so you think it's but that's Ray will tell you about those guys. But it's difficult to explain them, but it's an experience.
So little seems to be known about them, which makes the work that you're doing and hope to do in the future really important.
Yeah.
In terms of understanding how they function in their environment and what their impact is in that environment.
No, definitely. My personal research now with this project, I'm focusing on pangolins that's been confiscated and released. So we're looking at the success of releases. Because it's easy. Well, it's not always easy, but you retrieve an animal, you take it through care, and then you release it. So we're now just looking at what optimizes release, with the idea that the soft release protocol is necessary, because we found with a lot of hard releases where you just take the animal to a reserve and just let it go, it's still in a stress state, and then we get a lot of mortalities from that type of releases. So this allows them to just kind of get used to an environment, and then when you let it go, it's not this massive system shock. So, it's obvious why.
Talk through the what we just did at the place we were at 2 days ago, because that's a perfect example of the soft release process.
Yeah, well, that included also a bit of training
as well,
to include more people. Yeah, so that's Yeah, you've seen the process at the hospital, the veterinary hospital. so that guy, we went to well, that girl, that it was a female pangolin. We went to fetch her from the hospital and then take her to this newly approved release site. As you saw, those guys were also super amped to be
Everyone was so excited,
so
yeah.
positive.
Yeah. You said it's almost like adopting a child.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a lot of responsibility, and like you saw, I threw them a bit into the deep end because they need to understand the scope of it. It's not a fun pet project. It's a responsibility, and you're now a part of the team. They're not going to function on their own. They're a part of their entire project. So what we did there is first assess the habitat, which was obvious pangolin, prime pangolin environment. They've had pangolin sightings in that area as well, and we asked the manager what area does he recommend based on availability of food, shelter, which would be logs, caves, or ideally burrows dug by porcupine or aardvark. Aardvark also indicator of things like termites and the presence of termites and ants. So food, shelter, and water. Even though water is not really that important because their main source of water is metabolic water, so they're not water dependent.
Okay.
But they will drink on availability. So we checked out his recommendations. First night, they learned on why you should keep an eye on the pangolins, because once they find a burrow, they'll dig in. Sorry,
that's okay.
Bumped the mic. I'm losing my thoughts now.
Well, we were walking with everyone, with the team and everyone who's going to be looking after it, and then she went in to go. Looked like she was some interest in eating, and then she disappeared down that burrow. And we could see her out of arm's reach, just digging and amazingly digging what it seemed like underneath a termite mound.
And then she entered it from the bottom.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was definitely that was the first sighting for me as well.
Yeah. Had you not seen that before? No.
Not that, no. It's insane what you. I wonder how much we miss.
Yeah.
We then, I mean, we couldn't, even though your first instinct is to let her go. She's in a burrow. That's it. That's done with the release. But again, we need to monitor the success thereof. So we did retrieve her the next day. She's still in good condition. There was some evidence that she did get to eat.
Just back up one sec, because I want to explain to people about retrieve, because she wasn't in the burrow. So how does that process work? Just explain that process for people.
With
the tag,
the tag
and the telemetry.
Just make sure I don't share sensitive stuff. But so it's we use VHF radio telemetry.
Mm-hmm.
So they all got a little radio tag attached to them with a specific frequency. And
which is much like loads of different animals around the world.
It's the exact same thing. Yeah. But because pangolins go so low to the ground and also go into burrows, it's
difficult.
It can be quite difficult. Yeah. So you saw we had to find one of the few high points available there, and then essentially start scanning the entire property. Luckily, she didn't move too far, and we could track her manually. Like you say, with that equipment, it takes a bit of time and training, but it's quite user friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Found her again in a burrow, which meant we just had to come back later at night. So everything works on pangolin time. But it was good exercise.
Cancel all your plans.
Yeah, cancel all your plans, and don't make assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good exercise because the guys saw, first of pangolins can move, and it takes time. So essentially, with the soft release protocol, we have to walk these pangolins every night and observe them from a distance. We're not really bothering them, and confirm that they're eating and that they're not how can I say, freaked out. So like you saw that second night, it didn't even take 10 minutes for her to start eating and things, and she was.
So that she's calm.
Yeah, she was showing all the signs of a normal pangolin.
And you're looking for condition as well.
Yeah. But all those calm, when I say calm, it's like you said earlier. They don't give a shit. They just walk past you, walk over you. that's the signs of a normal pangolin. They're on their mission and that's it. So that was very good behavior to see. I'm glad it happened so quickly as well.
And lots of feeding.
Yeah, lots of feeding. And then before we give them a few hours, because normally they are active for, 3 to 5 hours a evening. So you physically have to walk with that animal for that amount of time. And then you have to look when they stop feeding. And now they're looking for shelter. And once you see, okay, she's done eating, then we put them back in, we take them back to their box, which is specially made for them. Gives them enough space and proper shelter so they can sleep in peace. But just before we do that, we just weigh them. So you can get an idea, are they losing condition? Are they picking up weight, or is it staying a bit stable? Because they will lose a bit of condition because they just got back from hospital
and
where
they're
they
still
were
readjusting
on drips
Yeah.
and everything, So they're in top condition when they get when they start this process. So they do lose a bit of weight, but it's nothing to really fret about. And as soon as everybody's happy, because all of this gets monitored by me, the professor, and the wildlife vets. So as soon as everybody's happy, we all make a choice together, and then we say, okay, now it's released, and you let her go, and then we try and monitor at least 3 times a week, where you go and just check for signs. And like I said earlier, when I spoke out that counterbalance thing.
The tail.
Yeah, the tail. So the tail is normally nice and kind of parallel from the ground. It's lifted up, even bouncing like that, as you see when they walk. So a sick pangolin will start dragging that tail, or struggling to keep that balance. So they'll start walking on their front legs as well. So you see a massive difference in that their condition. And we've had times where the soft release went well, and then you release, and then you see, oh wait, the condition is decreasing. So that's actually the advantage of the post monitoring, because now you can see, oh wait, there has to be something we missed, and you get it where there was an injury under a scale that got infection or something like that. It's very difficult to see when they're sick. Like they hide that stuff so well.
And seeing underneath the scales is difficult as well, because it's
you
the whole
saw. I was at the point where I'm smelling pangolins now.
Yeah, I know.
Because I'm smelling
to see if there's a wound.
If there's a wound and if it's infected. So people look at you strangely when you do that, but that's how it's done.
So that next phase, once you've you're no longer bringing it in every night, is the phase that we went and monitored this morning. First thing, with the pangolin that you've. How long have you been watching that pangolin?
It's the soft release phase, which you saw where we did the training as well. So on that site, the manager of that property, of that reserve, he is now reporting to the African Pangolin Working Group.
Yeah.
So he's now mimicking all the lessons that we've learned. He's now busy with the soft release protocol, where she gets back. Once he releases, then it's bit of an intense monitoring stage, where for a few weeks he needs to go every morning, every night. So in the morning he goes to find the burrow where she would find shelter. Not really mess around with the burrow like I mentioned.
Just identify the fact that she's
identify, is it a burrow, is it a log? Sometimes they sleep in the open, which is not a good sign. But identify where did this animal find shelter. And that allows you to, that's very convenient for you to then have a good starting point for the evening. And then you go later out the evening and see if you can't get a visual. But as soon as you confirm that animal is okay, the tail is off the ground, the behavior is normal, we back out. So from a safe distance, because now it's a wild animal, we don't want to mess around with it, we don't want the monitoring to interfere with their behavior. So then you just confirm condition and get out again. But that's for a few weeks, twice a day, he does that, and once you see this release is going okay, then I say we get to the point where I want sightings at least 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
We're just confirming that it's still in the area. Because if you're going to wait a week between sightings,
could be a long way away.
Massive distances, and it's not fun finding them again. But we are now exploring different types of satellite systems, and that just makes the world of a difference.
That's a bit of a game changer, that, yeah.
Yeah, completely.
We, with the pangolin that you're monitoring, that we went to see and observe this morning, River, we got to witness the most incredible thing that is part of what they do, what it is to be a pangolin, which was sniffing out a nice, big, sloppy buffalo turd and having a bath.
Yeah, and having a bath in it.
It just looked so joyous.
Yes.
It was kind of disgusting. But the way he was rolling and rubbing it into his belly and holding it in the ball.
Yeah, because they actually shove it into their belly and then they flip into that ball.
Yeah.
It's probably worth mentioning that's their defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got the scales and then they curl up into that ball. And it's essentially, not even a lion or a leopard can get into that ball, hey? Once they clench into that.
So you said that they hold their back legs with their front legs, or they?
Oh, the front of the body, they fold in their head and the tail covers the body.
Oh, so the tail is the muscle that kind of clamps round.
I don't know what the hell they're doing when they hold their back legs, because a lot of the times they'll just go and sit on their bum, tail in the air, and they just hold their back legs with their claws and like, look at you.
Just chilling.
Yeah.
Because you said there was one that you were monitoring and it was up on a rock face somewhere.
Flippin' took me for a 3-hour walk. Like it just moves and climbs one of these big copies. And then just when we got to the top, it just sat on its bum and held its feet and looked at me. I was like, what's happening? So I suppose they're... because their belly is exposed. I suppose that's a way of cooling down as well.
Yeah.
Because they do also go in that position and they urinate over themselves.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's cooling them down. It's not a very clean animal if you think about rolling in poop and urinating.
No, it was pretty disgusting when he finished rolling in the shit this morning.
He was proud of himself.
Absolutely covered. Absolutely.
I can't wait to see that footage.
I'm excited to look at it.
It's very. It looks playful.
Yeah.
Like, yes, shit.
He's having an absolute blast. You said that they don't see that well. Like their eyes, it's their nose and their senses that are. So
it's their nose. Their hearing isn't too bad, but their main sense is their sense of smell.
Is their hearing? When I was looking at some of the footage, I could see a little hole along the side. That's their ears.
Yeah.
A little hole behind their eyes.
And then you'll see some hair in there as well to block ants from getting in there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
because that would be very annoying, especially when he's got his head in an ant hole.
But funny enough, I mean, you saw they're not really bothered by sound that much, So it's only sudden sounds, branches breaking, a car door slamming, a dog barking. The only natural sound that I've seen them really react on, which makes sense if you think about it, is baboons screaming.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen them walk in the field, and when they hear baboons, then
because baboons will mess with them.
Yeah. Well, baboons mess with anything. Eh?
Yeah, they do.
So it's had opposable thumb, eh? But if you think about it, I mean, a pangolin is defenseless against a human.
Mm. Well, because a human just picks it up. And a baboon can do the same. Is a baboon trying to eat it? Well, I guess it would do if it had the opportunity.
Baboons have a very inquisitive nature, but baboons. I mean, I've seen them pull a civet out of a burrow. Yeah. To kill and eat, So if they get the opportunity, they'll try and eat it.
But most of the time they wouldn't be able to open that ball.
I mean, they're persistent. But in the one case where I've seen, looking at tracks, one of the pangolins I've released have been found by baboons, but they eventually got bored and left him. So the dog is now seeing the wheelbarrow.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
is that what the growl was?
Yeah, that's his eternal enemy. Yeah.
For my dog, it's the broom.
Oh.
Yeah, you go and try and sweep, and he's all over that broom, and he's growling at it and barking at it.
Nice. But you see, he's keeping a distance because he's afraid of wheelbarrows. So
why is he afraid of wheelbarrows?
I don't know.
I have no idea why my dog barks at a broom, because it's not like I've ever taunted him with it.
No, he keeps a safe distance, but he just wants everybody to know he doesn't like it. Sorry about that.
It's okay. He'll get over it in a minute.
No, he'll get over it.
Their defense mechanism is basically impervious to everyment. You just in passing, just a second ago, you mentioned lions and anything
Yeah,
else.
you'll actually see photos and stuff a lot of times where people see lions playing with the pangolin. They have killed pangolins because they essentially play them to death, but they don't.
Because they get tired of it.
Yeah, but they don't. You saw the scales, everything, like, it's all smooth surfaces, so there's nothing to bite onto or hold onto, or get your claws into. It's a nice.
It's incredible how it's evolved.
Yeah,
like that.
It's insane, eh?
Yeah. No, they're a magical animal, and I'm kind of upset that I've only got another day and a half to spend with them. And you, it's gone so quickly.
Yeah.
It really has.
Yes, no, but we got a lot done in such a short time.
No,
as well,
we have.
So that's fantastic.
What, apart from humans illegally killing and trafficking them, what other threats do they face? I mean, and obviously we've discussed the other wildlife.
To our knowledge, there is no really, they don't have a natural predator.
No.
That's where you regularly see baboons take down pangolins.
Yeah.
We've.
So is there other man-made things that cause them to die then?
Yes, yeah. I mean,
what about drowning? I don't think that's something I've ever. It's not something we've discussed. I'm just thinking.
I'm still waiting to see
it.
Apparently, they're very good swimmers.
Okay.
Yeah. So I haven't seen it yet, but but I suppose
if they fell into like something they couldn't get out of, obviously they would drown.
Yeah, then of course, yeah. But fence lines, electric fence lines, that tripwire that's there for predator control. Pangolins, when they cross fence lines, they do go underneath it. But on occasion they'll try to climb over the fence line.
Yeah. And
once that shocks them, they snap into their defense. So they crawl into that ball, but around the fence line.
Something continually shocking, and the more they get shocked, probably the more tight they hold on.
Because that's the only defense they've got.
Yeah.
And then that's very emotional seeing. It's not a.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
And there isn't really an understanding of how often that happens, I would guess.
I mean, a few. I mean, it's a rare species, so the few cases it does happen, you have to put it in perspective. That is a lot, and that's only a few cases where it's reported, because you have to realize there is a value of this animal on the black market. So when people find it, they don't always report it. They go and sell it to the sangomas or whoever they can get it to. So not all cases are reported, but enough gets reported that it's a concern to have. But yeah, of course, man-made barriers, like you say, anything where they can get stuck, that's definitely a problem. Especially because they're so rare, people aren't aware of it. And then naturally, we've had cases of a honey badger that killed one.
They're a top predator. Those an underestimated predator of the African bush.
We've had a case where an elephant killed one, a young bull.
You told me about that. That was unbelievable.
I mean, but it's an inquisitive elephant that doesn't know what it's doing. It's not like it's.
This was not the norm, because it basically stood on it, didn't it?
Yeah, so it's not a it doesn't know what it is, and then just the extreme case was the one ingested a wasp. It was a small type of wasp that goes and lies its eggs in the ant nest. So when it was eating the ants, it accidentally ingested the wasp that got stuck in its throat and repeatedly stung it in the throat, and it swelled and died of anaphylactic shock.
Such incredibly bad luck.
Yeah, like that was you don't even know how to respond to that, because what are the odds?
Yeah.
So there are these little things, but they don't have a regular predator that specializes in taking down pangolin.
What do you see as the kind of the future of pangolin? I think we're sitting in a place right now where seeing pangolin in 20 years' time is something that there is a very high possibility that might not happen. You might not be able to see pangolin, so certainly certain species, in 20 years' time if we don't address the issue that we're having right now with.
I think it's
poaching.
But it applies to all conservation efforts. Kind of, it's there's nothing that you can specifically do. You can't go and take one action that's going to have just the magical solution. Awareness and all that stuff is fine, but there's a certain mindset that needs to change in society. We spoke about it in South Africa. We've got all this wildlife, all this nature. How many people even know pangolins exist in our own country? In our own freaking country, how many, how many people are aware of rhinos, of wild dogs, of the status of these animals? And, people see it as this distant thing. It's there in the Kruger National Park. All these problems, all these problems are distant, and people should realize, yes, holy shit, this is a part of our country. This is a part of our world, and we need to be involved. Like we
and
need
value
to
it more.
Value it more. Yeah, there needs to, and it's it's a lot easier said than done. But of course, education is. But saying education is important, but saying it seems like the typical thing to say. Oh yeah, education, but
that's a really long term. That's
really
a long term thing. Education.
Yeah, people need to freaking wake up, because it's there are bad guys doing bad things, and
But there will always be bad guys doing bad things.
But it's not the conservationist or the ecologist. It's not their problem. It's all of our problem. Like these animals, all these species. It all belongs to all of us. So there needs to be a society mindset to get involved and
be invested in in the bush, the environment, and the wildlife that inhabits it. And that's true of any country that you live in.
And it's amazing. The girl that we're going to visit tonight, the pangolin, that's one of the locals that reported it. And this is a guy that owns a digital store, selling TVs and stuff. He's so far disconnected from conservation as possible, but just from a conversation around a fire and him, activating that switch in his head, he heard a conversation that led to something that led to him by chance hearing about this case, and we could successfully, retrieve that pangolin, hospitalize it.
Just because somebody realized there was something not right and did the right
thing.
Did
the effort.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy thinking, I'm not involved with pangolin stuff, like that's
not my problem.
That's the police's problem. That's nature conservation's problem. And this guy, that small effort, and now hopefully we're going to see her, because she's pregnant. So hopefully we're going to see a pup tonight, And so he essentially saved 2 pangolins by just picking up the phone, or not even picking up the phone, just by being aware of what's happening in his area. He had the opportunity to make a difference. And now the thing is, how many people aren't even aware?
Yeah. One of the conversations that you and I have had over the last couple of days is the dynamic and conversation that you get into from time to time, being in the position that you're in as a conservationist, involved with pangolin, but also being someone who is a hunter and does hunt.
Yeah.
How do you tackle that when you get confronted by people? How the usual stuff, how can you do that? How can you care for animals on one hand and then kill animals on the other? And you're involved right at the coalface of conservation of an incredibly endangered and highly trafficked animal. So clearly there's this amazing passion and care for an animal, and then equally you like I do, we hunt. And that paradox is a very difficult one to explain in a way that you can get people on board with the idea.
Yeah, wow. Threw me into the deep end there. It's something,
because we haven't touched on it yet. We've been talking about Francois, the conservationist, the ecologist, and I see those things as hand in hand. It doesn't surprise me, having got to know you, that you're a hunter, but it can put some people off guard.
I think people, like, the whole hunting thing, the whole answer to that question, like, people are making a way bigger deal. People are making a big deal about, oh, you're a hunter, now this needs to be explained. In South Africa, hunting, it's a part of our whole conservation system. It's not like, as a country, we got to... Oh, man, wheelbarrow again. It's not like we came together as a country and say, hey, guys, how can we piss off the world? And let's hunt. Yeah, it's a part of... It's a part of culture. It's a part of wildlife management. Over here, wildlife numbers needs to be managed. And we can dive into that conversation. That'll take freaking another 7 hours, you know. But I suppose it's, how can I, man, just lost for words.
I mean, here
People don't need to like it, you know. People just need to understand it. If you're going to step into any other country than you're even me, like if you're going to step into someone else's world, you can't then go and judge and demand things. You know, people have different cultures, different religions, different habits. You can't just attack them, and you especially just can't demand change if you don't respect or understand it.
and the understanding's the key.
Yeah. So for me personally, as a hunter, I mean, we discussed it as well. I hunt with my camera as well. You know, I'm very blessed to be able to live in the bush and experience the bush on a regular basis. So my regular hunts is with the camera in my hand. You know, I get to smell what a wildebeest smell like where I'm in the field, you know, and experience the wind and the stars and
click.
yeah, and tracking all that stuff. And I'm blessed to also be able to, when I need meat for the freezer, then I go and I say, okay, I can afford to hunt a kudu, and these guys need to reduce the females or the males or whatever, you know, and then you go and harvest. So it's way better than buying meat at the supermarket, you know, and it connects you with your food source. I mean, look at people even freaking, if you're gonna make your own veggie garden at your house, that's way more rewarding if you know you planted this and you like kept it safe from bugs and stuff, and this food comes from you. You harvested this. So, but then again, there's other people that don't work in the bush. They don't get to experience the bush on a regular basis. So their connection with nature is their hunt. You know, and then they also, I mean, again, it's a lot better than buying your meat from the supermarket. So, and I believe also as well, I told you, the day I stop feeling emotion when I harvest the animal, that's the day where I will stop hunting. Because I think it's important to realize, like, if you do eat meat, you should know where it comes from, and you should take the responsibility of taking it. If you can't just like be blissfully unaware, you know. So it's a deeper connection with everything, and you kind of feel a part of the system, you know.
And that's something that most people never get to experience. Actually, being part of the your system, as you call it, or actually being participating within nature, in the environment. And the greatest way of doing that is to sustainably work within it and be the predator that we are. Yeah,
and it's I mean, and everything in balance as well. You know, so that's also important to remember. You know, it's and be aware of what you take. We discussed it earlier as well. You know, everybody has a footprint on this planet. It doesn't matter what you eat, what you wear, or what culture. Everybody has an effect, and be aware of your effect and take responsibility for it, and give something back. You know, see how you can improve things so that, you know, whatever you harvest in whatever way, that it is that
wheelbarrow again.
Yeah, that it's sustainable for the future generations. But again, also, we spoke about this as well. I didn't grow up. Well, I grew up around hunting, but I didn't grow up that I want to become a hunter. And when I got to a point where I considered myself a conservationist, you know, where that's the direction that I'm heading in, and that's the stuff that I'm reading about. So I considered myself a conservationist, and then one of the biggest conservationists I've met at that point was a hunter. And this guy was a professional hunter, so this is his career. And I was blown away how this guy could beat me in any conversation, but not like we were arguing or anything.
But just with knowledge.
His knowledge was just insane, and his connection to the bush was just next level.
So you weren't seeking that out. You weren't trying to prove the point.
Not at all.
That hunters are great because look at this. It landed in your lap.
Yeah, and I was just like, what the hell is this guy on? I need some of that, you know, because and his connection with everything, you know. And I mean, I've met a lot of field guides and also very inspirational people. I've met a lot of people in the bush, but this guy was just
On another level.
on another level. He was a hunter, and if you think about our history, like it's a part of our. But if you think on cavemen, a hunter is that guy. He knows the bush. He knows how to go, do the effort, and bring back food.
He has to.
He
to
has
be
to. Yeah,
successful,
yeah. But that's a different term. If somebody says hunter today, it's a fat, rich white guy with a gun. That's the term hunter. But it's actually a much more honorable term. And this guy was that. Like, he was like, wow. And I went seeking that. That's the first time where I told myself, okay, I'm willing to step into this world and experience what this guy is talking about. I remember when visiting him, like during that moment of realization, he was cooking kudu fillet. And with that kudu fillet came an entire story of where that kudu came from. And the way he prepared it, I mean, he knows how to cook. He's not a guy that just sits and the chef hands him something or he picks up the phone. Like, he not only harvested it, but he cooked it for us and he presented it with pride. So we knew exactly where it came from, and there's this massive story and this massive memory that comes with that meal. And I was like, this makes sense.
Yeah.
So a lot of, like, not in the sense of hunting doesn't make sense, but this makes sense of why someone would want to do it. And since I've stepped into that world, yeah, that's
the experience that you're now having.
Yeah, and as a hunting, when I have to explain hunting, well, that's my reason for it. Like, it's just a connection to the bush that you can't. I mean, I suppose it's not. I'm not saying everybody should be a hunter.
But understanding it is important.
But understanding
and
it
its role.
And even a lot of my friends, if you go and hunt something that, like an eland, for example, that's a lot of meat.
Plenty.
Yeah, and you get to share that with people. Yeah. Like, even so, they don't hunt themselves, they're also so thankful for that, and they know where it comes from, and they're connected to it as well. So it's
the sharing of the spoils
Yeah.
of a hunt, I think, is one of the greatest
Yeah.
human connections that we can have, because not only is it connection with the wildlife, it's then connection with other human beings.
And it has. I have to say, it has connected me to everything that I do, because it's a lot more real. Because it's easy leaving your comments on Facebook and just living in this ideal world where you can say hunting is bad, rhino on trade is bad, this is bad. It's easy to just go that route and just, I don't know.
The thing is with that kind of, with those kind of throwaway comments, especially on social media, is there's no consequences to it, and you can ignore people that want to have a reasoned argument or a discussion to maybe make you change your mind, but you can just ignore it. Because it's not like you and I sitting around a table where we can debate it and bounce it back and forward.
It's such a waste of, like, with anything. Like, if you're gonna invest in a conversation on social media on that type of stuff, it's just like a lost waste of time. You don't need to. People should learn. You don't need to prove yourself to anybody online. Let your work speak for itself. But like I said, like, in the end, sorry if I'm going in a loop, but
no, keep going.
It definitely connected me to the bush in a way that I've always loved nature. I've always loved animals and stuff. But since I've become a hunter, or since I started hunting, that has taken me deeper into it. The people that I've met, the conversations that I've been in, it took me way deeper into conservation than anything else that I've done. But I'm sure it is a really hard thing to explain.
It is, yeah. It's the fact that it's so hard to explain is the reason that I think we've been fairly unsuccessful in articulating it to a greater general public who are not involved in it.
But I also think it is kind of a part of our, because look at today, our bodies are so far disconnected from our minds. The only thing that we're doing, we're sitting and reading the entire day, and our brains are just being flooded by crap. We're not exercising. We're not even planting a vegetable garden. We're not surviving. There's no survival drive or anything anymore. And I think hunting is kind of connects us to that dormant instinct in us. I think that's why why people connect with it, and suddenly understand it. Because you get a lot of people that that disagree with it, and then after they've experienced that, they're like, I know what you're talking about now, but I still can't put it in words. So I do think there's a role of that where it's a part of our genes in a sense.
I mean, it definitely is. I think it's within all of us.
Yeah.
But unlocking that becomes increasingly difficult the further each generation which is removed from our historical need to do it, which is what you're saying. Now we're very comfortable.
Yeah.
You don't need to do it.
Yeah.
It's not a necessity in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
You go to the counter and you exchange coins for meat or whatever else.
Yeah. And it's actually scary to think, like, if you don't know where meat comes from, there can be some horrible stuff in there. Eh?
Well, yeah, I know. Well, we've had our fair share of meat scares in the UK where people have been consuming things that they didn't know they were consuming. You probably saw the horse meat scandal.
Oh, yeah.
That was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, right.
People thought they were eating beef and they were actually eating ex-race horses.
Yeah, man.
Which is fine. I mean, the French eat horse all the time, but if I'm going to eat horse, I want to know.
You want to know, yeah. Wheelbarrow
And then an arse in my face. I'm glad I didn't turn around anymore. I think in Africa in particular, I think you probably, as a continent, and certainly South Africa, I can speak for that more, consume more game than most countries in the world, I would say. Because in North America, you can farm game, but you can't sell shot game.
Yeah.
We shoot a lot of venison. We don't shoot venison. We shoot deer, which turns into venison. In Scotland and the UK, but you barely ever see it in the shops.
Yeah.
Most of it goes to game deals. It gets turned into stuff. But you go here and you see half a different types of game biltong.
Yeah. Well,
and your butchers.
Remember, we're in the bush now. Yeah. So the butcheries and stuff here in the shops closer to the bush. Yes.
Probably not.
The popularity is increasing. Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah.
But beef is still a big part of South African culture.
It's a big industry as well.
Yeah, but the venison, it's been actually ages since I've probably read up on game meat. But it is increasing, and they want to get to points where you can more easily export the meat, because that's a big thing. Another controversial topic would be, for example, the trophy hunting.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea that international hunter comes and he shoots the animal and they just leave the meat there in the bush. That's not the case at all. But they can't export the meat. But the meat still gets utilized then
within the country,
within the reserve.
You're normally eating the meat from the people who hunted the week before.
Week before you, because
in camp.
The carcass first needs to hang and the meat needs to be processed.
Yeah.
But if the guys stay long enough. If they stay long enough, then they consume the meat that they've harvested themselves. But the popularity for venison meat is increasing. But back in the day, it was seen as a cheap food. You don't want to eat that. But now it's becoming a bit more fancy.
Yeah, it's funny how times change with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of meats around the world and species that were considered just for the peasants.
Yeah.
But now are like prime cuts.
Yeah, oxtail.
Well sorted oxtail. Even your sea trout.
Yeah.
I mean, those were in the rivers at home. Sea trout were just seen as like pesky sea trout.
Yeah.
Anybody can have those.
Yeah.
We don't want those. We're only interested in salmon. How times have changed.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, South Africa is also a good example. I mean, back in the day, even the property that we were on this morning, that was cattle ranches, like in the past,
Where River was.
Yeah.
Ah.
So, due to hunting and tourism, there's a value on wildlife. It can be utilized.
And a value that's greater or equal to the cattle farming.
Yeah. And because of that value, and in a case like this, in this area, yes, I mean, it's beautiful, but this is crazy out of reach. This is not, tourism isn't sustainable here. If you go 100% tourism on some of these properties, it's not how can I say, charismatic enough to make enough of an income to have that reserve be sustainable.
Yeah, you wouldn't pull the people in.
Yeah, so the majority of these properties, have hunting on them. But it's in that case, yeah, that's actually important to say. Like hunting there, it's a management tool. It's a form of income, but it's done smartly. I mean, what do you do with your business? You think about your choices. It's not just done randomly and just go and kill everything and bask in the money.
There's no future then, is there?
Yeah, you have to manage your populations. You have to manage your genetics. You have to think about your choices. And hunting is a management tool, and it's opportunity for a lot of these places. The reserve that you were on this morning. So that property started as a 4,000 hectare property. Today it's 18,000 hectares, just because of hunting. And a dash of tourism, I suppose. But really, just for fun. There's no real income. So it speaks for itself. And an 18,000 hectare wildlife property is way better than a bunch of cattle. And you also saw in this area, agriculture. The soil and everything is primed for agriculture.
Oh, they could turn it into something else for sure.
Yeah, but yet we're. How long?
Proper bush.
For hours and hours we've been driving through bushveld.
Yeah.
And that's way better than agriculture and freaking livestock farming, to me at least.
Well,
and
I don't. I think if people visually see it, it becomes pretty obvious which is the better alternative. And I think that's the thing that I always try and explain to people as a consideration when they're trying to decide or make comment on things like hunting.
Yeah.
Is what is the alternative? So right now, this area that we're looking at here in front of us is largely speaking used for hunting.
Yeah.
So tomorrow it's not.
Yeah.
It's going to be used for something.
Yeah.
So what is it going to be used for?
I can't remember who said it, but it's said so well. Money's like water; it will flow.
Yeah.
Like it needs to. If you stop it here, it's gonna flow that way. You have to control that flow. If you're gonna stop the hunting, eventually it needs to go, and you'll have to convert it to agriculture. You need to convert it to
something that's going to generate money.
Yeah.
Because
or it just collapses.
Yeah.
A while ago, I worked for a year doing game capture, where you're part of a team that actually goes and you catch excess game on different reserves, and then that gets sold then to different properties. So it's a way of genetic exchange and getting rid of excess numbers and stuff. So that's also a management tool. But in a job like that, you see a lot of different properties, and you do see places that's badly managed.
Okay.
And you literally see these places collapse, because they're you think I'm not saying every property needs to have hunting. That's not my point. But not considering your options and not making good choices because of your own emotion, then you just see these places. Even actually hunting, where people just they make bad choices with their hunting practices, and that has the same effect. Bad management choices, then it just goes.
Yeah.
The best, and in today's time, it is possible. The best is do your own research. There's more than enough.
And ask questions.
Yeah, and it's because you'll be surprised of what you learn. Like don't do one-sided research. Like do your research, read up on a topic. Ideal, go to these countries, go and understand it. Talk to people that don't share your point of view, and you don't need to like it, but at least understand it. In the case of I'm working in pangolin conservation. There's cultures that use pangolin meat and pangolin scales. Like how can I expect to even have a conversation? Never mind even change their habits. How can I even expect to have a conversation to these guys that think so much differently than I do, if I don't do the effort to understand why do you value the meat? Why do you value the scales? Because if I understand them, they might actually be willing to understand my point of view as well. So it's and I think it doesn't need to be explained anymore. All the information is out there. Do the effort. If you really care, do the effort. Go and read, and do it with open mind. Sorry if that sounds a bit.
No, I mean that's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And I've just 2 days ago, or just when we arrived into camp here, I watched a video on, it was like a chat show back in the UK, and a friend of mine, Charlie Jacoby, had been on representing hunting.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't his fault. He's an incredibly articulate man, but he just got smothered by an entire audience and pretty much everyone else who was
Yeah.
on the panel who was against it. And as soon as you say something like, because they were talking about particularly trophy hunting in inverted commas in
Yeah.
Africa, as soon as you say something like, well, if the hunting isn't in an area, especially in a place like Africa, then the wildlife won't be there anymore. And then the immediate reaction is, well, that's ridiculous. You're saying that
Yeah.
for it to be there, you have to go and kill it. But just being a little bit more calm
Yeah.
about trying to understand what's going on the ground and coming to the place
Yeah.
and looking at it and seeing what the alternative use of the land is, just like
Yeah.
what we were saying, I think it would eventually begin to sink in. But most people are not prepared to look beyond that kind of blinkered view. That they've formed an opinion. They don't like the idea that someone would want to kill an animal,
Yeah. No, they're lazy.
and
They're
that's it.
I back in the day when I worked with students and we did a lot of conversation on this topic, because from people it's international students from all over the world, and I just got to the point, like I said, where you're tired of explaining it, and I said, like, these guys just pointing fingers it's freaking lazy. If you really care about conservation, I'm not saying if you're an animal lover, if you're a conservationist, like, if it's easy, you're doing it wrong. If it's fun, you're doing it especially wrong. Fun might be a byproduct of the work that you do. Like, you're allowed to enjoy some of the stuff that you do. I don't mean it should just be torture, but if you're doing it for the fun, bugger off, man. You're not doing conservation. You're just playing. It's
Dipping
easy
in.
going to a place, petting lion cubs, taking pictures, flipping, calling yourself the ultimate hippie or whatever you want to make your tag,
Yeah.
and then say to the world, you're this animal lover, therefore you're a conservationist. No, you're lazy, and you're a joke. You're a show. Like, talk to the guys. If you wonder about any topic, pangolin conservation, wild dog conservation, predator conservation is a big deal. It's so difficult. Marine conservation, I don't even want to touch that. But if you go to these conservationists and you talk to them, because these guys, they lose the luxury of opinion, because you have to understand people that don't think like you. You have to understand the real situation and not the Disney situation.
It's the science.
Yeah.
It's what
Yeah.
do the facts show us?
Yeah.
What do we
And
understand from what we know?
You have to be involved, and sometimes you have to acknowledge a difficult choice, because conservation is difficult. Conservation is not. It's not working with animals. If you want to step into conservation thinking, and I was there thinking like, oh, I'm gonna work with animals. This is gonna be so much fun. It's not. You're working with people, and you're working with people that think differently than you. And you have to. You achieve nothing by pointing fingers and writing a blog. you have to be able to communicate with people. You have to
feel like they do something.
and you have to understand their point of view, and you have to dive deep into these things, and it's not always pleasant. I remember with this is years ago, but reading up on rhino conservation. It's actually, I recommend people do that. It goes deep, but the role hunting played in the past in saving rhinos.
Yeah.
It's
a great story.
Yeah, and it's not hunters saying that. It's not. It's ecologists and conservationists saying that, because the data doesn't lie.
Yeah. They were on the brink
and,
of
and
extinction.
then when you say something like that, when I go and I say, hey, hunting saved the white rhino from extinction, people go ballistic. I'm like, wait, I'm not saying I want to hunt the white rhino. Like, I don't. I don't. And do you think I want to say something like hunting was good for rhinos? It's not something I want to say, but it's fact. It's there. But it's a good example of how complex conservation can be. And again, it's easy saying people just love animals. It's not. People don't think like you. People think differently. Like, conservation is working with people and dealing with different mindsets.
Yeah.
So
this has been said many times before. Ivan Carter, when he was on the podcast, he reinforced this. But in the modern world that we live in, and particularly in a place like Africa, if the wildlife doesn't have a value,
it's gone.
It's gone. And you look at rhinos, because you bring it up. Rhinos are in a precarious position because they're poached all the time.
Yeah.
And a lot of places don't want to have rhino anymore. because it's so expensive and so much hard work just to keep the things alive.
Yeah,
because they're and I can't remember the last rhino I saw outside of a national park. And when I used to come, I used to see them all the time. Every farm friend that I had rhino on it because it was just the thing that you did. Everyone had rhino. They're all gone now.
No, it's 100% risk.
Yeah,
it's 100%
there's no return.
risk.
Almost no return. Yeah.
This morning, no, I'm lying. Was it late this morning or early this afternoon? I got a call of a friend of mine that's involved with rhino stuff. And me and you, we're walking in the full moon, getting lack of sleep, and we're just enjoying this pangolin stuff. This full moon is freaking this guy out. And he just called me, he just needed to dump some stress, just get it off his shoulders. Like it's intense. It's difficult. It's not fun, you know. And I understand. Like I even spoke to one rhino owner, you know, because he's considering selling, or he was considering selling his rhinos. And I told him, like, I will not judge you at all. You know, your family lives on this reserve. You know, you endanger your property and everybody on it
by having
rhinos.
What a sad situation.
Yeah, it's difficult. And then in that case, when in the end he decided to dehorn his animals, social media had a field day. So this guy got judged
for dehorning.
And again, I'm not going to go into that topic. I recommend people do their own reading on pro-dehorning, anti-dehorning, and there's a lot of good reading either way on that. But in this case, I'm just talking about that choice, which in that case, you know, dehorning isn't always a good choice. You have to realize each reserve has its own challenges. Then you get each country has its own challenges. Hunting might work in South Africa, it doesn't work in other countries. You know, so it's important to keep that in mind. But in that case, when that guy decided to dehorn his rhinos, that was a good choice. The presence of poaching activity, because we saw a lot of tracks and everything on the property on a regular basis, all of that decreased instantly.
Because the incentive was gone.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to remember not to relax. No. Dehorning is there's not a solution. You know, like if there was a solution to rhino poaching,
it'd be finished.
Like some people would be really rich, but it's important to realize there's multiple deterrents, and you have to combine those deterrents, and each property again is different, you know.
But this guy was judged on that decision.
Oh yeah.
Probably by people who don't know anything. Probably never even seen a rhino in the wild.
It doesn't. And then when you say, listen, in this case it was a good choice, then you're the bad guy, and it's like, really, do you think I want to say dehorning? Do you think I want to dehorn a rhino? No. Like, I don't want to say this, but as a conservationist, you have to take these points. You have to, but then these guys, they don't even want to hear it. No. You know, so if you're like that, you're not a conservationist. You might be an animal lover or nature lover or whatever you call yourself. But if you're a conservationist, you have to be able to leave your opinion on the side and listen to information and opinions opposite that of your own and even understand it. You don't need to adopt it, but at least understand it. Understand how other people think so you can engage.
And your actions need to be taken without emotion.
Yeah.
Because emotion's important because it motivates people. But the result of your actions, the choices to do what you do, whether it be dehorning rhino or where you even culling animals, old animals, or moving animals to other places, those decisions need to be based on science.
Yeah, no, definitely.
For the species, not the individual animal.
No, definitely.
And that's it's so hard to get people to understand that, especially in this kind of Disney world, because people become attached to an animal. We give them names. You watch all your wildlife programs, and every lion has a name in the pride.
All my pangolins have names.
Yeah, but it means that I think from at a level where people aren't involved in the day-to-day working and management of the wildlife, they put so much value on an individual animal that it blinkers them from making the right decisions and comments about the long-term survival of a species. Yeah. And that's the difference, I think, between an animal lover. That's not the right term for it, but and a conservationist.
Yeah, No, it's. I always tell people, like, switch your emotions off when it comes to the conservation decision. Switch emotions off, look at the information, and then switch the emotions back on. But if you've got this wildfire of emotion, like that's gonna cause damage.
You'll make poor decisions.
Yeah. So it's good to have that fire. It's really good. It's good to have that passion. I mean, it's important to realize a lot of these people have so much passion, but just switch it off for a second, or before you light that fire, just look at the information, and then when you light the fire, it's a controlled fire at least, and you can control that passion. You can direct it so much more effectively. You can then say, like, okay, let's pick an example, elephant hunting. I'm not going to go dive into that one, but you don't need to agree with it. You don't need to agree with the information, but now that you have the information, at least you can now see, oh, this is the actual problems, and this is how the system works, and this is why people agree with it, this is why people disagree with it. I'm on the disagree side, but now I've at least I'm armed with information that I can now tackle the real problem and not this imaginary, passionate problem that I've got in my head. So it's not just this raw passion, but controlled passion, which is good. So that's my my view on going on that, but it's always difficult.
It is. It's it's a conversation we have a lot, and I don't have the answers to it. I believe, and I believe that hunting is vitally important in many instances for many species for their long-term survival. And the moment I don't believe that to be the case, I won't do it. Yeah. And I wouldn't support it.
No, definitely.
I'm not going to support the hunting of pangolin.
No.
Because it makes no sense.
Yeah.
There is absolutely no reason why you would need to do that.
Yeah.
Or there's no logical reason why it would benefit the species.
Yeah. It's
when you look at the balance of the numbers, how they interact with their environment and other species.
It's an unsustainable, irresponsible harvesting of a resource.
Yeah. But there are plenty of other examples like impala and kudu, and go name any probably 30, 40 species of antelope in Africa where it makes perfect sense to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, as long as it's monitored.
Yeah, and if it's done responsibly,
Yeah.
But I mean, if impala are going to be endangered now, no, like leave the numbers. Like it doesn't. But the numbers are okay. Impala's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean they're blowing up, aren't they?
Not going down, but.
But it's also about responsible use of resources, and I think we have, and I've said this before. I think we have a responsibility to use our resources, and it's irresponsible not to use them.
Yeah. just
as the same as it's irresponsible to use them irresponsibly.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it applies. I mean, that applies to everything.
Yeah.
You know, like any way we utilize this planet and its resources, like that applies. If it's done irresponsibly, it's just dumb.
Yeah, if it has negative effect. Yeah. But to sit and not use a resource which is sustainable and can replenish itself is silly.
Yeah.
Especially in the world that we live in, where we're continually fighting to try and work out how do we minimize our impact on the planet. So you look at utilizing game in as natural an environment as we can possibly have on the planet today, like this bush that we're sitting in right now. Utilizing a harvestable surplus of game here is the most responsible thing that you can do, in my opinion. And unless somebody tells me otherwise, I'll continue to believe that, or shows me why that shouldn't be the case.
And I'll show you on a map. Back on the pangolins, you know, we approve reserves and things where pangolins get released, and they get released, and that pangolin, it's not going to go, hey, this is a nature reserve, I'm going to stay here. It moves on. So if these are all cattle ranches and agriculture and stuff, do you think that pangolin is going to survive in a habitat? It's not. No. I'll show you how these things moved, and they've moved through tourism reserves, through hunting reserves, you know, through government reserves, through agriculture plantations. They move through these things, you know. But the cool thing is that habitat is available. You know, the habitat is available. The food is available. The ants are there. You know,
And they're there because it isn't just dust.
Because so you can't argue with that. And people go like, oh yeah, all these big species, all these big charismatic mammals and stuff. Have you thought about the small mammals, insects, bird life, things that make an ecosystem actually function? Grass, trees, because of utilization. And I'm not gonna go just hunting, but because of tourism, because of hunting, because there's a value on these things. That's there. That available habitat is there, and it's not just the Kruger. It's the majority of available habitat in South Africa is in private ownership, meaning that it's actually sustainable business.
It's used for something.
Yeah. And in South Africa, I'm not going to dive into numbers. It's been ages since I've been on this number. I've had all this stuff memorized, but we've got poverty.
And that's true across Africa, generally speaking. Yeah.
We've got a massive population. If you compare us to Namibia, there's more people in Cape Town than there are in Namibia.
I think you've got 45-something million here, maybe a bit more now.
Yeah. So we've got a crazy population. So why is our habitat and our wildlife numbers increasing? Because it's got value.
Yeah.
You can't argue with that.
And it's given value by utilizing it in a responsible manner.
And I'm not just saying boom hunting, but hunting has played its role.
Yeah. But like you say, there's tourism there alongside.
Tourism has played its role. Game capture, game breeding, all this stuff has played its role. And you can't really give a comment if you don't understand these things. And it's freaking interesting once you understand it. And then you can go, wow, this is interesting. And then you want to go to a different country and then you see, wow, what they're doing works completely different to that country, but this is also working. Yeah. So again, each reserve has its own issues, its own challenges, each country even more, each culture even more. So it's you have to be out of the box the whole time. You can't afford to think in the box anymore.
We could keep talking about this forever.
Ever, yeah.
We've got other things to do today. So we're going to go and track another one of your pangolin.
Yeah,
we're going to go and braai in the bush first, aren't we?
Yeah.
That's the plan. I think. I don't even know what the time is now.
She's allowing us the time because this one...
Oh, okay. It's 4 o'clock.
It's 4 o'clock already, wow.
Yeah.
This one only starts being active at about like 11 o'clock at night. So we're going to be awake for a bit and then head out to find her.
Sounds good.
Hopefully she's got a pup.
Yeah.
And then we'll braai again.
Well, 3 o'clock braai with the beer. Just a celebration. When you mentioned to me, I didn't. When I came up, I didn't expect to have the opportunity to see a release.
Oh yeah.
I mean that was just pure luck that happened. It kind of coincided within a few days of you knowing that I was coming up. So that was just magical for me. I didn't know anything about the hospital when we first had a conversation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was, you just jumped on me. It was like, you're in Joburg. You got to go see the hospital.
Got to go to step one.
Yeah, step one. It's like, awesome, great. I mean, and there this pangolin was in front of me. It was just, still mind-blowing. I still can't articulate it. And now you drop the bombshell that there may be the opportunity to see
a pup. That's,
We'll see.
If that's the case, then your visit has meant rain, a successful release, seeing that insane dung rolling thing.
Yeah.
And if there is a pup as well, then you're not leaving.
Scottish good luck charm.
Yeah, Scottish good luck charm. Yeah.
I tell you what, I wouldn't need much of an excuse to stay. I've been in worse places, that's for sure, and I've been looked after incredibly well. It's been amazing.
It is, yes. A lot of that happened in a very short time, eh?
It has. Well, Francois, it's been, we've got a little bit of time still together. We're probably going to, we're definitely going to do some more filming and do some more photography. But it's been great to speak to you here. I'm so delighted that I've had the opportunity to come here and record this podcast with you. One, because it's been fascinating. It's been an incredible learning experience for me the last few days, seeing a species that I had only ever seen in pictures before and understanding what you guys are doing on the ground, but also to bring from the field the latest fundraising effort that we've made, and speak to the person that we are about. I've shown you the kit. I haven't officially handed it over to you yet. We're going to take some pictures. But all of this kit is yours, and there's more money sitting at home that we're going to tally up. And we've been talking the last few days about what that might be used for, and we will tell everyone what it's been spent on. But to deliver it for people to see, you raise the money, companies and individuals put up items, other people put up the cash to bid for it, won it, we've exchanged the items, we've got the cash, and we've bought this equipment, and it's here. It's actually in the field. 100% of that money has come here, and it's not being wasted on anything at all.
I don't
it's
even,
great.
Yeah, I don't even know how to say. I mean, you're saying thanks to me, and it's a big pleasure. But I don't even. I told the professor the other day, I don't really know how to say thanks, because thank you. It's like, oh yeah, thank you. But it goes like seeing everybody's involvement. It's such a pleasure. Even on the release side there, like everybody's so motivated.
Yeah.
That crazy feather painting of a pangolin, like somebody taking
from Claire Brownlow.
Yeah, somebody taking the effort in. I mean, painting a pangolin, you have to look at pictures of it.
I sent her a bunch of your pictures.
Yeah, and doing that, and people becoming involved, and then, I mean, this equipment, it's going to make a difference. I told you about future research and stuff, so just thank you to everybody that's involved, and to you guys for doing the effort in putting it all together. It's thank you from me. It's thank you from the entire team. It makes a massive difference.
No, it's absolutely our pleasure. I'm enthused and will forever be bitten by the pangolin bug, because
they crawl into your heart.
They really do, and I've been fortunate enough to hold the one in the hospital when it was being taken back to its crate, and I'll never be able to forget that. So from now till forevermore, the pangolin will be a species that sits deep in my heart, and I've got no choice whether I like it or not. So thank you for that opportunity.
Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, and I can't wait to. I'm not quite sure how we're going to put together the footage that we've been taking over the last few days, but there's going to be a film output from it.
Yes,
and hopefully it's going to lead to something way bigger. You're looking at the bigger story of pangolin conservation, conflict, the issues they face, so that we can raise more awareness of a species that really, really needs help. It's
seriously like every bit of effort. Actually, if you talk to Ray Janssen as well, the professor, you'll see every little bit of these efforts. It just goes a long way. It even before you get to the physical difference it makes, even the morale of people becoming involved. It's because a lot of the times with this, it feels like, because you're dealing with a species that few people know about, so you're constantly explaining the situation from the beginning. So you kind of feel isolated. So even that, just when people become involved, it's such a big pleasure. And it reinvigorates people, and then again, the physical difference that the equipment makes and the donations make, it just, from tracking equipment to building the boxes to gathering data, to safety, to vehicle repairs, that's it. It literally allows us to do the work. Yeah. If what else can I say on that?
I should highlight. I'm assuming that there's a way to donate to the African Pangolin Working Group.
Yes,
on the website.
They recently just these guys are busy. All of them very busy. So the website has been under construction for a bit. The new website is launched, and there is a donation button on the website. They've got a PayPal account as well.
Okay. So it's easy for people to give
money. I think PayPal,
well.
international-wise, PayPal is a very convenient way to make physical donations. And then for anybody that actually gets on their trips to see a pangolin, there's also a link on the website where you can report pangolin sightings, where you give the GPS details and the habitat details. It's just a short questionnaire that it just allows us to get a bigger picture of what people see out there. So that also contributes to the research.
To the knowledge, yeah. There was one other thing that I wanted to just mention and point out, is that if people are wanting to support pangolin conservation, there really is no other place at the moment to look than the African Pangolin Working Group.
There's a few organizations.
In South Africa, though?
In South Africa, it's African Pangolin Working Group.
African Pangolin Working
Group.
I just said it wrong a minute ago. I'm going to switch the words around, but yeah.
No, we're working, we're working with the police and with nature conservation. So that's a big thing, not just on pangolin organizations, on any of these non-profit organizations. Anybody that wants to make donations or get involved, do your research and then do it again.
And this is why I brought it up, because we've mentioned this quite a few times. There's a lot of organizations out there that promise a lot, And just the very, very sad reality of the world that we live in is there are a lot that are really, really not utilizing the money appropriately, in my opinion.
Yeah, please look at what you're donating to and stay involved. Follow up. You know, you have to talk to Ray about the dogs. I'm not going to mention even that further, but
okay.
You know, with rhinos,
you're talking wild dogs.
No. Dogs for that's assisting with with anti-poaching efforts and stuff.
Okay.
You know, stuff like with rhinos or with any anti-poaching dogs, donate dog food, donate milk powder for rhino calves for rehab centers. Like, make sure where your money is going to. And like I said, like, do your effort or do your research and do it again. It's awesome for people to support, you know. And but yeah, it's just these days it's people take chances, eh?
Yeah.
People take chances. So
we've seen it a lot, and it's something we've mentioned before is that you just gotta, if you're gonna go to the effort of giving money, then please make sure it's going to the right organizations, because there's a lot of scumbags out there, and they're not necessarily using the money where you think it is. And I don't want to put people off giving money, because there are some awesome organizations out there. But just like you said, just with a little bit of research, you can work out who the good guys are, who are really doing great work on the ground. And if anyone who's listening to the podcast is in doubt, I'm not saying that we'll have the answer, but if you want to email the podcast and ask us, especially if it's in Africa, it wouldn't, or North America actually, it wouldn't take much for us to speak to the right person who will know.
Yes.
So please feel free to contact us.
That's a very good point. Like, contact people, and I think we live in an age where that information is available and where you can reach the correct people. But like you said, there's so many amazing organizations, which is definitely worthwhile to support. But just keep your eyes open.
Right, and we're going to pack up. I need to get the gear ready, because we're on to phase 2 of the day, or phase 3 or 4. I don't know. We're up so early.
Now the dog is calm.
Yeah, once the podcast finishes. He's definitely contributed to this podcast, because everyone's going to know his voice now.
Oh, yeah.
Francois, awesome. And we'll continue putting up a few stories on Instagram over the next few days.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the show. Join us again in 2 weeks' time. There might be a special show in there that we might record at the Northern Shooting Show, so you might get an extra show, but we'll see how time is, because the next few weeks is pretty crazy, because we've got the Northern Shooting Show, then I am flying a drone all week for the German Game Conservancy, doing surveys for an entire week, and then I am off to Germany, so it's got a crazy few weeks. I was going to say, if you would like to leave us a review, that would be greatly appreciated. We've had some brilliant reviews in the last 3-4 weeks. We've had some absolutely really funny ones, and we appreciate them. Every single one helps. People do read them. And that is how I base a few of my listening habits off of, as in when I found a show, I'll go and read the reviews and see how many stars it is. So we really appreciate all of that. For anyone that has just started out listening, there is loads of podcasting platforms out there, but if you are struggling, then just get in touch. The top 3 that we always say is Spotify, iTunes if you've got an Apple phone, and Stitcher. But like I said, there is absolutely loads out there. I'm actually thinking about changing my phone from Apple to something else. My phone, unfortunately, when I bought it, I have quite an old phone compared to what's out now. It's an iPhone 6, which I think came out about 4 years ago or 5 years ago. And I've never really been one of those people that goes and buys the latest phone. For me, if it works, then that's fine. It's all good. I've had the battery replaced in it once, because it was giving me about a 3-hour battery life, and that was fine. But now it's not really working anymore, because I don't have any storage. When Apple first brought this phone out, they brought out a 16 gigabyte version. I thought, 16 gigs, that'll be all right. Won't need any more than that. But what they forgot to tell me when I bought the phone was that 14.5 gigs of it was taken up by their system, so there was literally no room left to put any apps on. So I think I've got about 3 apps on my phone that are actually usable. and then I've got no pictures actually stored on it. They're all on the iCloud, so you can't actually look at them anyway. So yeah, I'm thinking about changing my phone to a non-Apple one, which would be the first time in probably a decade. So if you have a suggestion on a good phone that you think, you know what, this is brilliant, and I was using an Apple before, let me know, and I'll look into it. Well, I hope you found that show absolutely fascinating like I did, and thank you again to everyone that donated money, because you really have made a difference, like you've just listened at and heard about right there.